Welcome to this free webinar. We try and do a free webinar once a month for people who are not in our programs and want to hear a little bit more and want to meet us and see what it is we do. Our mission, certainly mine is, and I know my husband Mark's, is to reach as many people as we can as soon as possible, so that people can understand that when they create the right environment for their body, that healing can take place. And we've seen phenomenal healing take place in people's lives, regardless of what they've been told. This is an incurable condition. You can't, we've dealt with people in the past who've had liver cancer and told they've got 3 months to live. And they changed their diet and they changed their lifestyle. And the one woman was 57 at the time, and she's now well into her 80s. And she wanted to live because she wanted to see her grandchildren born and grow up and get married. And she's been able to do that, and she's in perfect health. We've had daily basis on our programs. We have people finding they're sleeping better, their bowels are working better, they've lost excess weight, their skin has improved, their mental focus has improved. Everything's just working more efficiently. And so really, this is not about me being some kind of guru. I'm nobody's guru. I really am not. I'm here to help you with stuff that I've learned in the last 35 years on how incredible this human body is and how it repairs itself if you create the right environment and work with it instead of against it. And tonight we're going to be talking about behavioral problems and learning difficulties, brain function, and food, and how food relates to this, and lifestyle issues as well. Now, initially it was just going to be, speaking about children and with ADD and autism, but there are many adults today that have been diagnosed with those conditions as well. So whatever I'm saying about this applies to children and adults. It applies to girls and boys. It doesn't matter what country you're from. Some of the conditions are incredibly high in countries all around the world. United States is usually right at the top of the list, well, at least in the first 3 to 4. In many of these conditions. So I'm going to go through the different types of behavioral and learning conditions and neural problems that affect social behavior, such as autism and even epilepsy. I'm not a doctor and I'm not pretending to be one. This is the studies and the research that I've done, and using the tools that I've got now and sharing it with people and letting them apply it to their lives. We've seen phenomenal reversals and conditions, and I'm going to share some of those stories with you tonight as well. So it's really, as I said, I'm not anybody's guru. I don't have any magic cure for you. The miracle is actually the human body. When it is given what it needs to repair itself, it invariably does do exactly that. So I have been focusing on diet and lifestyle for many years now, and that's where we've seen incredible success with people, is helping them become more successful. And so what we're going to be focusing on is all the different things that affect us from our diet. We're going to look at genetics as well. And so I'm going to start, and my notes are going to be available in a booklet form, and I'll tell you more about that at the end. But you can watch this video on YouTube as many times as you want to. So the role that diet plays in the behavior and learning and brain function is vital. Every single thing you put into your mouth, every single thing your child puts into their mouth, is either going to have a positive or a negative effect on the brain. It's just that simple. It's not that complicated. Yes, there are environmental factors, and they are part of it. And yes, we have a genetic factor that comes into it, and that could be part of it. But you can actually change your genetic expression. Now, you look at any of the work Dr. William Lee has done. He's a medical researcher, very well known around the world, and he started out developing drugs that would actually deal with cancer and the growth of blood vessels that fed tumors, for example. And he developed this drug, and it was going to cost over $150,000 per person, and he got pretty disillusioned by it. And he was like, there's just no hope. There's no hope. Here I'm trying to find a cure for cancer. So he thought, well, what would there be that's natural that could have the same effect? So he took, I think the first 2 foods he dealt with was strawberries and tomatoes. And he gave that food to people that had these tumors being fed by the blood vessels that the body had created. It's called angiogenesis. And so by giving them this food, it had an anti-angiogenesis effect on the body. It actually blocked the blood vessels from feeding the tumor. And you might say, well, what's that got to do with, behavioral problems and the brain and everything? It has lots to do with it, because in the process, what he found out is if you change your diet, you can change your genetic expression. And so often we'll say, it's genetic, and then that's it. But if you go back several generations, you find there is none of these conditions. It's very much westernized, modern day. Certainly, in the last 80 years. I mean, look at autism was diagnosed first in the 1940s in the United States. And so we go back 80 to 100 years. Before that, these things were not mentioned. But a lot has changed. Our lifestyles have changed, our environments changed, our diets changed, and that's what we're going to look at, okay? So genetic makeup plays a role, but as many have found, as I said to you, Dr. William Lee has found you can change your genetic expression when you change your diet. Faulty genes develop gradually with faulty living, okay? So what you find is that we inherit the lifestyle and the diet that our parents followed. And like I look at our family, my father comes from Dutch parentage, and anybody from Holland, there is a great love of sweet things. I mean, the Dutch sweeties and the biscuits and the cookies and the little macious little licorice aniseeds coated in white and pink sugar, and there's just so much of the sweetness. And I'll never forget, I've never actually been in the country of Holland, but driving through the airport, when we stopped there for a couple of hours in a layover, Mark and I were completely astounded by the amount of sugary things that were sold in the airport. Not in any other airport that we've been to have we seen it that bad, and the amount of alcohol that was available. Now, my father was a huge sweet eater, grew up eating lots of sugar, and grew up, as an adult, you can't have sugar anymore, and that's when you start to crave alcohol. And he was a fully blown alcoholic who periodically went on the wagon, and when he stopped drinking, he used to have pockets full of sweets, and I loved him for that because I ate them as well. But I know how refined sugar affects my brain in several ways. Probably I might have been diagnosed as being on the spectrum of autism. My school report said I daydreamed, I stared out the window. Sometimes I would talk too much. Then that was the attention deficit side. But my biggest problem was that I socially couldn't fit in. I was terribly shy and introverted, couldn't communicate efficiently. I remember being asked my name in class, several, beginning of each year, what is your name? Stand up and say your name. I couldn't stand up. My face went redder than my peak endurance that I've got over here. I got hot and flustered, couldn't look the teacher in the eye. I always struggled to look people in the eye, struggled as a kid. It was a big problem with me. And now I spend my life looking at people in the eyes all the time. But my whole persona changed dramatically when I was, once I'd had kids, and that was in my 20s. And so I started looking at their diets a lot closer and started changing my diet, and became bolder and more able to look people in the eye, and didn't daydream. When I daydreamed, I used to just go inside myself. People would talk to me and I wouldn't answer them because I was just inside my head. I just wasn't that aware of things going on around me. My mother still tells the story of how we'd be driving along in the car and she'd say, look at that funny man. And she says 10 minutes later, Marianne would pipe up from the back, where? What funny man? I'd be somewhere else. And so I've been able to write many books, many books, recipe books, probably 7 or 8. I'm trying to think the quantities, and then a series of booklets and articles. I can focus for hours on time, which was at a time, and it was something I could never do as a kid. So I'm very passionate about how your brain is affected by what you eat, what you put into your body, and how you live. And so we're going to look at that, okay? I know that I was able to rid myself of terrible mood swings, terrible depression, suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation. I wasn't even on medication, and I planned my suicide so many times. I've told my story often how The only thing that stopped me was that my Sunday school teacher, when I asked her what would happen if I killed myself, she said, you'll go straight to hell. And I was terrified of going to hell. I've since read the Bible from cover to cover, and it doesn't say that at all. But I'm grateful to the Sunday school teacher for stopping me, because, you know, I could have gone home and jumped off the roof or stepped in front of a bus or done something. And I was only like 8 years old. So it's a manic depression. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was in my early 20s as well. Concentration problems, all these issues that I had as a kid. Now, I've seen so many times how people can have their babies born and they're absolute sweethearts, and they're these sweet little babies, and then by the time they're 2 or 3, they've turned into these incredible monsters who are trashing the house and stamping their feet and behaving incredibly badly. I know couples where they can't go out because they can't take their children out in social settings because their children are so destructive and they can't control them. Now, yes, some of the stuff has to do with discipline, and discipline, as we know it, is not about hitting your kids with a stick or your hand. If you look at it, discipline would be guiding sheep with a staff. You don't beat the sheep with a staff. If you beat the sheep with a staff, they'd probably run away. You just hook them very gently and steer them back into the fold and bring them back online and keep them on track just by gently nudging them. And so we do need to be very involved in helping our children making better decisions. And one of the things that I've learned being exposed particularly to Charlotte Mason's educational philosophy, but even Maria Montessori and even the Finnish educational system, but in my own life being at school and how I hated it and how I hated my kids being at a traditional school, because it was all about winning and coming first, have the top marks come first, and none of it was about building character. And I think if we take that incredible pressure off our kids, it's not about winning, it's about learning and loving learning. I loved learning once I'd left school. I hated being at school. There was nothing I liked about it. I didn't do badly. I got a university entrance school leaving certificate, which means I was in the top sort of group of students, and I could go to any university if I'd wanted to. And I got a bursary to go and study teaching, which I promptly did because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, as much as I did well, I hated it. I hated the way it was taught. I hated the way they said, what do you think? And then marked your stuff wrong. It was just, none of it made sense to me. And so we started a school just over 7 years ago. And it's been amazing for me to actually see. I've, over the years, helped a lot of people and given them the information and written my book, Healthy Kids, which is right here. And many of you may even have it. And for those of you on our 365 program, Healthy Kids is part of the package that you get, the PDF copy of Healthy Kids there. I know I just whipped that away really quickly. But it is available online from our store. It is available on Kindle, and it is available if you do 365 or you're doing our natural health and nutrition courses. You get all the books. So there are several stories. I'm going to share some of the stories with you. But at the end of the day, changing diet and lifestyle has been the most phenomenal thing. Seeing people with kids that have got attention deficit order, asthma one kid's got, and the other one's epileptic, and the mother changes the diets, and all of her children improve at different rates and in different ways, but they all improve. And then the parents' health improves because they go on the program with their kids. It's amazing to actually see. So I believe that with the information you have tonight, you'll be able to start making some changes in your children's diet. So there's a lot of information. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. As I said, the booklet will be available, and I'll tell you about that at the end of the day, at the end of the session as well. So yes, discipline and boundaries is very important. It's important to be able to say no to children. And we've seen that very often children that are attention deficit or autistic, the parents no longer say no. The kid's allowed to do anything they want to because they feel so sorry for them and they don't know how to deal with it, that there's just no boundaries in place. And a boundary in place is you can't whack your kid sister with a wooden spoon. You can't kick the dog. That's not acceptable. Building character is what I was getting to. It's more important to teach our children how to have respect and kindness. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, successful people that do well in the world we live in, are people who you want to do business with because they're respectful and kind towards you. You want to employ them. You want to be employed by them. You want to hang around them. You want to marry those people who have good character, who are diligent and hardworking, but at the same time, they're kind and respectful, and they're always ready to pitch in and help. Those are the most important values we can teach our children. So regardless of whether a child is autistic or ADD or ADHD or any other problem, is to really focus on teaching them character and how to develop good character. Because we live in a world where so many people don't have any character. They'll lie, steal, and cheat at the drop of a hat. And those are the basics that we need to teach our kids. And then you can start working on the education and the system you're dealing with, okay? But it's almost impossible to teach good character if their diets are not right. Because if a child's depressed, or their blood sugar's bottoming out and they're suffering from reactive hypoglycemia, which means a part of the brain that controls moral behavior, planning, and forethought just shuts down completely, and the part that takes over is the primitive area of the brain that manages appetite, aggression, and sexual function. And you don't want your kid to be in that animalistic, very primitive state, because that's when they kick and they scream and they shout and they have tantrums. And you cannot reason or teach a child in that state of mind anything about their character. So it's helping them understand that things are going to change in the home because you love them so much. You want them to feed their body the best so that their body works the best. And you're going to have kids who are going to say, I don't like that, or they don't. A lot of children with learning issues and with brain issues have tactile issues, and they don't like textures of this and textures of that. But within the array of natural whole food, you're going to find a kid that only wants smooth things will love the banana. A kid that doesn't like the bananas. I hated bananas as a kid. I wanted crunchy things. And I still prefer them, but I'll eat a banana now. There are things within the spectrum of whole foods that you can choose. You don't have to eat bananas. I grew up perfectly well without bananas, and I probably now eat one a year, unless the bananas are dried and they're not slimy, or they're in something. I'll put banana milk in muesli or something like that. Banana milk's just milk, just not milk. It's water and bananas blended together. And you can add a little bit of vanilla or just have bananas, and the banana must be ripe, otherwise not very nice. All right. So we do have the issue of boundaries, and discipline is very important for all conditions. Autism, Asperger's, dyslexia, epilepsy, all of it needs loving boundaries. Very important to have those loving boundaries. You cannot just allow your kids to go to bed anytime they want to because you just don't want to fight them anymore. And there are ways. You need to read books by people like Charlotte Mason, Maria Montessori, who really studied children and found that there are different ways to deal with children. It starts with respect from the parent towards the child, speaking to the child with respect, whether they're small children or young adults or older adults. It's about eyeball to eyeball. It's so easy not to make eye contact. It's so easy to be mad. When we're mad, it's not easy to be mad with somebody and make proper eye contact with them. So it starts with basic things like make eye contact with your child, sit in front of them, and connect with them. It doesn't happen if you're just holding their hand and walking and talking and not. You need to look at them. You need to stop. When you make eye contact, you're saying you're important, and that gets their attention. And it's not mollycoddling them. It's just connecting with them. Look at me. Talk to me. And we've had kids, as I say, on the spectrum. We find that they've got into the bad habit. Once we've changed their diet, there's a huge improvement, but they're in a bad habit of always looking down and not looking at people. And then we say, look at me, and they're so funny. They do this, and then they look down again. Look at me. And then they really struggle, and then they eventually look up. And I very remember this young kid that was at our school, Ruben, some years back when he was still very young. One day I said to him, Ruben, just look at me. And he lifted his eyes like this, and I almost drowned in these enormous, big brown eyes that were just kind and gentle. And it was like I saw straight into his soul. And he connected with me, and it was just so amazing. And so we did that with kids like this, and we still do it, the teachers in the school. We will say, Ruben, Annie, whoever it is, look at me. And as they look, there's that connection. And then they find that connection actually makes them feel good. But it's a constant working at it, not shouting, encouraging, and feeding them healthy food and creating a healthy environment. So I've, of course, had the privilege and honor of learning a lot from my own 3 children. My youngest daughter is 35, my oldest is 42. And I have 5 grandchildren that I've learned a lot from as well. And it's been amazing to see with them. I mean, Marie Claire was the one that used to avoid eye contact and say, look at me, Marie Claire. She was always the one I was having to make say, look at me. And it always worked. When she looked at you, she got it. But when she wasn't looking at you, she didn't get it. She just didn't get whatever was, because her head was too busy with things. And when they're not looking, they're busy with the stuff inside their heads. It's very important. Starts with that, okay? All right. So, it's been so interesting with me because some of the kids in our family, when they were little, they just get the healthy thing and they eat better, and others have taken time to get there because they're exposed to other things at school and with their friends, and then they see what actually works. And honestly, I've seen the whole range of the attention deficit, the hyperactivity, the no eye contact and the mumbling and the not communicating, and the Stephen, our oldest grandchild son, he's going to be 20 this year. I homeschooled him for a few years because I knew that the teacher said he wasn't able to concentrate, and he walked around the classroom and he interrupted other kids. And so I homeschooled him. I thought, well, let's just homeschool him. He nagged. He told me that he's going to do really bad things at school if I don't homeschool him because he hates the school. I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. And I've had other kids tell their parents that one kid said to her mom, if you hadn't taken me out of school and homeschooled me, I was ready to kill myself. So you've got to look at the schooling system. And if you can't school your own kids and you feel nervous about it, then you can possibly get a tutor. There are young students who can work with, or older retired teachers who are more than happy. And it doesn't have to be every day. You can work with a child and have them doing their education 3 days a week, and in between you're doing fun stuff with them, teaching them crafts and woodwork and hiking and doing amazing things with them. We're really stuck in this educational system. There's got to be 5 days a week, and there's so many holidays, and it's so many hours, and they've got to get so many marks. It's bizarre. It was started by the Prussians, which was the Germans, who were wanting to produce soldiers at a young age. So they put them in uniform and they rang bells, and it's completely unnatural. Think of when you learned the most. You were probably having a lot of fun with somebody who taught you. I learned to play the cello when I was already in my 50s. And I don't play fantastically simply because I don't practice as much as I need to. But I was able to learn to read music, because I was having fun and I was older and it was something I wanted to do. And we got this thing, we've got to teach them how to do everything. Reading's important, writing's important, and numbers are important, but not numbers for numbers' sake. Numbers for the sake of being able to measure up a room so you can work out what kind of carpeting or tiling or flooring you need to put down. Measuring, I had a child come to our school who refused to do maths. She just said, I will come to your school. This was the daughter that was going to take her own life. And her mom said she was struggling because she was getting to grade 6 and she wasn't qualified as a teacher and she felt like overwhelmed. So I said to her, hey, so here's the deal. What if you do maths for the first term, and if you don't like it, you can drop it? And I know at our school, everybody ends up enjoying maths because it's relevant. It has to do with real things in real life. And she was like, not clean. I said, she doesn't like maths and she will never do it. And I said, okay, you told me that at the age of 11, you are a great seamstress. You have a sewing machine. And what do you make? You make clothing. Okay, so when you're making clothing, how do you know what size to make the clothing? Oh, she says, I have a tape measure. Oh, that's interesting. And what's on the tape measure? Numbers, she says to me. And I said, so you're doing maths, actually? No, but I'm not. I said, but all numbers are maths. You've just been taught numbers not connected to anything in real life. When you taught numbers connected to real life and actual living, then suddenly numbers make sense. So sometimes we also need a different educational system and in an environment where it is healthy. Because a lot of people, you send your kids to school, you're trying to feed them healthy, and there's a tuck shop or some kind of school shop there, and all the kids are given money and they're buying all the junk food in there, and your kid's getting, drinking a can of soft drink on the side with 8 tablespoons of sugar in it, which is going to affect the brain. I'm going to get to that now, okay? So what happened with Stephen was we homeschooled him. He was doing really well, and we put him into a little Montessori school in kindergarten because we thought we need to prepare him for grade 1, and he was doing really well, and they said, gosh, he's really doing exceptionally well. And then suddenly it was like, Stephen's a problem. Stephen's dyslexic. Stephen's aggressive. Stephen bitter kick. Stephen, I'm like, what? He's at this little Montessori school. They told me there's no refined sugar. There's no shops. There's nothing else. I said to the teacher, what is he eating at school? She said, nothing that would affect him. I said, well, is he eating anybody else's food or anything else? She said, well, his little friend brings him a bran muffin every day. So I said, well, could you please ask the mother, what is in the bran muffin? And she said, okay, came back to me and she said, it's made with whole wheat. It's made with added bran. It's made with extra virgin oil. It's made with blueberries, and it's made only with brown sugar. And this mom thought she was, and she had organic eggs in there, and she thought she was doing a fantastic job. But the kid has a brain allergy, which Dr. Philpott in his book, Brain Allergies, talks about. He's a psychiatrist. And the brain allergy can be anything from alcohol to sugar to gluten to wheat. It can be anything that makes you behave in a way that's not being your best self on a continual basis is very usually a brain allergy. So he developed dyslexia because he grew up in a home where he wasn't exposed to refined sugar at all. And people have said to me, oh, but it's because he wasn't used to it. I said, no, it runs in the family. My sister was dyslexic, and my sister's older than me. And she had a daughter who was dyslexic. And then she took the daughter off refined sugar. And I'm told that daughter now is in her mid to late 30s. So this goes back a long way. My sister is 65. So, and we were exposed to lots of sugar as kids. We ate sugar. I have photographs of me, or had photographs before they got burnt in a fire, eating sugar out of the sugar bowl at the age of 3. I just was a little sugar addict. So yes, the genetic issues are there, but if you change the diet and lifestyle, the genetic issues, your genetic expression changes, and those issues go away. And I've seen it every single time. So here's what we did. I watched him really carefully, and I figured out, because it was this weird thing that would happen. He'd get hyperactive attention deficit on the first day of having his bran muffin. But because he was having one every day, it carried on all day. And on the weekends, he'd be really difficult, and he'd throw tantrums. And I didn't know this kid. He was a good, nice kid. Tantrums and screaming and shouting and crying, and nobody loves me. And I used to do the same thing with my mother. I know I'm adopted. I'm definitely adopted. My sister is, you say she's older than me, but she's shorter than me. And she's got blue eyes and blonde hair, and I've got dark brown hair and brown eyes, and I must be adopted. Anyway, so I had all this. My mother said I had a persecution complex, but much the same as Stephen. He would get aggressive day 1, grade 2, day 1, he'd be attention deficit. Day 2, he'd be very, very aggressive, and that's when the biting and the kicking would happen. And day 3, he'd be extremely weepy and crying, and day 4, he would come back to normal. And I only figured that out when he stayed home for the school holidays, and by literally day 4, day 5, he was normal, and his reading levels was exceptional for his age, and his maths was exceptional. But when he had sugar, he couldn't do anything. And he got, besides being frustrated, the sugar was affecting his brain in a way where it would shoot the blood sugar up. Your body goes into a state where it says, produce lots of insulin, bring it down. Otherwise, we're going to go into a diabetic coma and die. Blood sugar comes down. And then you get that reactive hypoglycemic, which is genetic. I suffered from it. My father suffered from it. And we would trash the house and scream and shout at everybody. I never touched alcohol, but I loved sugar, and I behaved just as badly as my father. He used to trash the house and scream and shout at everybody. My dad was very nice when he was sober. He was very nice even when he was drinking. This usually used to hit him 2 or 3 days after a bender, much the same as me. If I had an absolute bender and ate all this sugar in one go, I would find that 2 or 3 days afterwards, it would hit me at its worst. My blood sugar would just bottom down, or bottom out at least. So yeah, this thing was genetic, but when we changed our diet, I haven't had an episode like that for 35 odd years, close to 40 years even. And the odd occasion in the beginning when I occasionally had sugar, I could feel myself starting to get really irritated with everybody around me and very disturbed. My brain starts feeling like it's racing, and it feels like it's out of sync. It does I can't explain it to you unless you've actually felt it. I explain it to Mark and say, my brain feels like it's jumpy. It's just jumping like this. And it's just like, it's actually, probably it's because it's misfiring. And what I was diagnosed with was a chemical imbalance of the brain with bipolar disorder, because I had these incredible moods and incredible lows. But in fact, so many people today are diagnosed with it because of the same reason. And very often they were attention deficit as kids, very, very strongly a sugar issue. So I noticed then when Stephen went to a friend's house and he had sugar, 5 days, 3 to 5 days, take him to recover and his brain would work. Go to a party, 3 to 5 days. So I did what I did with my kids. I did exactly the same thing that I did with them, which was before a party, you feed them their favorite food, which is always spaghetti with a bolognese or a tomato type sauce. So I'd do a nice homemade tomato sauce on the pasta and feed him his favorite food, and I'd even give him his favorite dessert, which would be baked bananas with cinnamon and honey, and off he'd go to the party with a full belly, and he wouldn't eat anything. He would just play with the kids, which is really, why do you go to a party? To eat all the junk and drink and fall down and on the ground? It doesn't make any sense. You go to the party to hang out with your friends. So that's what we did with him, and it worked, and his brain works incredibly well. He eats, he was totally able to reverse this condition, and instead of now reversing his letters and his numbers, he was no longer dyslexic. The sad thing is, very few children that are dyslexic are off sugar for longer than 3 to 5 days. So they might have, maybe they have a treat on a Wednesday, and then they have a little bit on Sunday, and then they have a little bit on, maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they have a little bit, and that would be in a healthy family. And so very often parents are actually doing their best to help their family be healthy, but they're trying to not make their kids feel like they are being deprived of candy and ice cream. So you've just got to learn to make ice cream with coconut milk with no preservatives in it, and raw honey or fructose or maple syrup, 100% pure. And these are the things that I will encourage you to do, is to take the foods your kids love and make the healthy version of it. And if you don't know what the healthy version is, on our program like 365, you're getting 4 recipe books with so many recipes, hundreds and hundreds of recipes, 4 actual books. One of them is Healthy Kids with more recipes in them. All the books have got recipes in them. And then you can just go, if you're not on any of the programs and you say, I just can't afford to get on the program, well, on our YouTube channel, you can subscribe to it. It's free. You can watch. There's lots of things that I'm making, and you'll see little Stephen in many of the videos. Sometimes he's sitting on the cupboard above my head. Sometimes he's standing next to me. We used to play around with him a little bit like Where's Wally? The kids getting our monthly DVDs, when you did those in the early days, would look out. Every week they'd be looking out for Stephen and find out where he would pop up in the DVDs. It was a lot of fun doing that, okay? So, all right. Where are we? So unfortunately, many parents don't realize that diet plays a role, or they'll think that it plays, and they'll think, well, they're giving them whole wheat bread and brown sugar, and so they're okay. But they don't realize that they're trapped in the cycle, and it's really sad. So once you take the food out, whether it's refined sugar or dairy products or gluten, it depends on what the issue is with your children. And as we go through each of them, I will be talking about them in more detail, okay? I am unable to give you all the information in this document that I've put together. While I'm talking, it's just not possible. We'll be here for 5 hours. So what we do find at our school, and what I've seen with so many other children even before we started our school, that children get drugged. Hyperactive attention deficit kids get drugged, and they're put on toxic drugs like Concerta, Ritalin, for example, and for their entire school year. So they actually one of the things, and so many parents have done this, they've taken the medication to see how they feel on it. And once they've been on the drug for like 5 to 10 days, they're like, I'm not putting my kid onto this drug, because they felt so emotionally disconnected. And that's one of the problems we found with attention deficit, which I'm going to focus on now first, is that the kids that have been on these drugs for attention deficit and hyperactivity actually suffer from once we, at our school, we don't take them on any drugs. We get the parents to commit to a healthy diet. We tell them what to do. We give them the guidelines and we say, work with us and we'll work with you. If you don't want to work with us, we're going to phone you to come and fetch your child and take them home and keep him home until the effect of sugar or the additives or the preservatives are worn off and he's behaving and being his best self again. So it's happened a couple of times with parents, and then they get it. And then they go through a whole holiday. They decide they're going, this kid's behaving so beautifully off refined and processed foods that they're going to keep them off in the holidays. And they come back and they say, oh my word, that was the best holiday we've ever had. We've always dreaded school holidays because we're with them, 24/7. But now that he is on this program, he's nice to be around and he's kind to everybody. So it's an amazing thing to see. The problem, what we do see is the kids that come here that are off the Concerta and the Ritalin, they're emotionally stunted. So, for example, one of the kids came here, we had 2 coming at the age of 13 in the same class, and I just happened to teach that class that year, one girl and one boy. And honestly, they were very clever. Attention deficit kids are usually pretty much intellectually gifted. They have very fast brains, and the brain is moving, processes information very fast. That uses up a lot of glucose. That's why they crave sweet things. And they'll drink sweet things, or they'll eat sweet things with the wrong kind of sugar in it, okay? What they need is lots and lots of fresh fruit, lots of it, because it doesn't upset your blood sugar. It's stable on your blood sugar. It's full of wonderful water-soluble fiber. It's full of the B vitamins that are needed to process the glucose in the brain and in the entire body, whereas refined sugar has no B vitamins in it. You end up robbing the body of the B vitamins. Whatever B vitamins you took in with your meal, you're now robbing it because you took in refined and processed sugar with no B vitamins, because when you process and refine it, you destroy all the B vitamins. Now there are none to process that glucose, so you've got to rob it from somewhere else. And then because you don't have enough B vitamins, you end up with a chemical imbalance of the brain, which is what I ended up suffering from. And they wanted to put me on a drug that would have turned me pretty much into, I know, and I've seen what lithium does to so many people. It just also emotionally just switches you off. It's really not a great drug. And of course, it has a lot of other side effects besides weight gain. It can affect your liver, your lungs, and your liver and your kidneys and your heart. So, yeah. So what we had was these kids that came to the school. They stopped it, and the work improved dramatically. We did find that the one boy worked better with. He has very sensitive to sound, and so if he heard anything, whether it was a bird outside, he'd be looking, or somebody dropping a pencil, he would look at any little thing, tiny little amount, somebody scratching themselves. And so we found that we could get him to do work when he came to school. Now, this is what people don't allow in schools, and they'd rather put a child on a Schedule 7 drug, which is hectic. So we put headphones on him. We got a list of music from his parents that his parents had approved, and he would listen to his music, and he did the most beautiful work. And so it worked. And isn't music better than putting them on a drug? But that's the problem with the educational system. The teacher stands up front and wags and does all the talking instead of the kids doing the working and asking the questions when they're stuck in a place. That's how it should be. The kids should do all the talking, asking questions of the teacher or having to discuss it with a friend. But we're actually told you're not allowed to talk to your friends in class. Okay, I can understand that they're just playing around and not doing the work. But very often the kids want to discuss what they're doing, and there's no issue with that. We won't let our kids discuss stuff in school. There's no working together as a team in most schools these days. And then when we leave school, we have to go into the corporate environment or into a big company, and then the company spends thousands, maybe even millions annually to do team building exercises with the people that work in the company because they don't know how to work as a team. Let's go figure that one out. Doesn't make any sense. All right. So, right. I just have to read you this story. Recently, a mother approached me. Actually, I can read this with a shocking story. Her now teenage daughter had been diagnosed as bipolar and had seen several top specialists, psychologists, and psychiatrists. The end result, her daughter was prescribed 4 to 5 different drugs, including lithium, given to her. Then, at that age, she was 11 years old. This, in turn, resulted in her feeling she had lost her child, and she plummeted into an emotionally detached child whose mood swings affected the entire family. After 6 years of struggling, so 11 plus 6, she was 17, with her child and asking questions, she realized that diet was a major factor. A change to a natural whole food and unprocessed diet resulted in a mentally and emotionally stable and confident young woman who feels she's come out of her dark hole. And that's what she said. She said, Marianne, I feel like I've been living in a dark hole. That children are very different, okay? Their behavior can be quite different, even from the same food. Some react to refined sugar. Some kids just get sick and their immune system doesn't work properly because refined sugar affects 3 things. It'll affect the brain and central nervous system. Well, central nervous system includes the brain. Can affect the endocrine system, which controls your body weight, and your immune system. The endocrine system also helps the immune system work properly. So some kids get sick, some put on weight, some end up with rashes and allergies, and everybody gets different things, and one kid may end up with learning problems. So we look at the 3 kids. I know my 3 kids react very differently to everything. You can look at 3 kids and say, it can't be their diet. This must be something they've got or genetic, or it's from something else, because they're not all responding in the same way. But that's just what our genetic makeup does. We respond in a different way to different things. I suffered from bipolar. I'm in a family of 4 kids. Nobody else was bipolar. Yeah, 1 or 2 could get a bit moody. 1, really. I'm not mentioning names. But I was the one that was completely crazy. And now I'm completely sane. All right, so you find that some kids can react to refined sugar, some react to colors in foods, others to preservatives. I get hives or urticaria, or my chest feels like it's closed. My brother will actually get full-blown asthma from it. I had an asthma attack once in my life from pigeon poop, and I was an adult at the time. I was putting it into my compost and thought I was getting free nutrients for my compost, and it affected me. But everybody reacts differently. My husband didn't get asthma from that. I got it. And, one kid will get asthma in the family, one will get eczema, and one will get nothing. They seem to be okay. Maybe they're carrying a bit of extra weight. So we all respond very differently. And so it's usually the reasons why parents will think it can't be the diet. And a doctor will look and say, can't be diet, because we should all get the same. You drink alcohol, everybody gets drunk, but it's not the same. Some people drink 1 glass and get drunk. Some can put 10 away and they're still walking around and talking reasonable sense. So there's very often, as I say, we tend to avoid it. Okay. So what I hope to help you do is to isolate the problem food, remove it, and observe the change. And your reward will be a child who is liked and loved by the family. I had a mother come to me many years ago as well. She said, Marianne, I've got a real problem with my child. He's 7 years old and he is like really, really bad. We've done everything. He just can't sleep. He's destructive. He breaks things. We've taken him to psychologists. We've taken him to psychiatrists. We've taken him to people in our church who laid hands on him and tried to cast out demons. I mean, could you imagine a 7-year-old going through stuff like this? It's hectic. So I said to her, well, first thing, so what does he eat? She says, the only thing he'll eat is cornflakes with milk and sugar. That's all he'll eat. So I said, well, how did he get to this point where that's all that he would eat? She said, well, he just refused to eat anything else. So I said, so who buys the food in your family? She says, I do. So I said, so what would happen if you didn't buy the cornflakes? So she said, well, if I didn't buy the cornflakes, we'd have such a commotion in the house, screaming and shouting and ranting and raving. So I said, well, are you prepared to go through that for 3 days to help your child? She said, 3 days I can handle. I said, it might be 5, but probably 3. She said, I can handle that. I said, because he's going to scream and shout and rant and rave for 3 days. But what you do is you get cornflakes that are made. You can go to a natural health shop and get cornflakes that don't contain any sugar. Most cornflakes, most puff rice contain sugar added before you've even added it, okay? So get some cornflakes that are natural and don't have sugar added to them. Even if you're using the same cornflakes, the sugar level is quite low. Instead of putting actual sugar on it, use fructose. It looks and tastes like sugar, but doesn't upset the blood sugar, okay? Do that. Instead of putting cow's milk on, we're going to use some almond milk or some oat milk or whatever. Natural plant milk, the one closest to milk, is usually almond milk. So she decided to use that. The change in her child was phenomenal. She came back 2 weeks later and she said to me, she started crying, telling me, she said, I didn't want to tell you this, but I realized that I've never liked my child. He's just been impossible. And he wasn't breastfed. He was put onto formula, which is full of sugar. So you've got refined sugar, you've got preservatives, additives, emulsifiers, and all kinds of other strange things as well. She said he was just an impossible baby. He's just been impossible. She said, in 2 weeks, I've fallen in love with my child, with my child. I loved him because he was my child, but I actually disliked him intensely. I like my child. He is a nice, kind, gentle person. And this is the first time I've seen this. And that was just by taking dairy products and refined sugar out of her child's diet. She actually found that in time he started eating fresh fruit and wasn't finicky about the fact that it had juice in it. Or he still had some textural issues, but in time what happens is you end up just outgrowing those things. When I say outgrowing, your body chemistry changes. And when your body chemistry changes, your brain and central nervous system start functioning more efficiently. So seriously, there's so many parents that are so frustrated and they literally can't sleep at night. They're on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. And I am encouraging you to take a very holistic view at it. You can't change your child's diet and not change yours. So if there's refined sugar and caffeine and colorants and preservatives in your diet, you're going to have to start somewhere. The best place to start is you can start on the 365 program, which is my year of health, or you can go on the 100 Days to Health, which is a slow, gentle program where you don't focus on taking things away, you focus on adding good things. So you eat raisins or dates or apples or bananas or mangoes or whatever it is, dried mangoes, dried pineapples, before you eat the candy or the chocolate. So you say to your kids, one day my daughter said to me she wanted a chocolate croissant. I said, sweetheart, I love you too much to poison you. But if you want it, you can buy it with your own money. But you know the golden rule in this family. If you're craving sweet things, you eat fresh fruit first or preservative-free dried fruit. If you're craving salty things, have some avocados or some nuts and seeds because you're usually needing extra fats in your diet. She ate it. I always kept apples in the car because they're the cleanest fruit to eat in the car. And so she ate an apple in the car on the way, and she said, there's the bakeries coming up. Don't forget to stop. She went in. She used her money, her hard-earned money that she'd pulled weeds out of in the garden, and she went and she bought the donut. She didn't eat it in the car. She got home. She broke a piece off. 2 weeks later, I found this dried-out chocolate croissant in her bedroom, not even half eaten. I said, what's going on? She says, no, I just break a piece of every night because it's not as nice as I thought, but I don't want to waste the money, so I think I should just have a little piece every now and again. That was her thinking. So there are programs for you to go on. As I said, the 100 Days to Health is a fantastic program for you to go on. The 365 gives you a lot more understanding and depth and understanding and a lot more support, and it's longer. But you can do both. You can go on the 365 and then you get the 100 Days to Health for free as well. So I'm not at all advocating that you ignore the doctor's advice with anything, but I do ask that you question it and you look at the side effects of any medication your child is on. Make sure you have read every single side effect. Very often your doctor has not read the side effects. He doesn't know those are the side effects. So if your child starts suffering from side effects of being on medication and doing weird things, or body just responding and you're feeling frustrated, look at any medication they're on and please make a point, okay, of working on weaning your child off the medication as you improve the diet. But work with your doctor. If your doctor won't work with you, find a doctor who's into integrative medicine, who's very keen to help your child. I'm not for vitamin supplements because we only absorb 4 to 10% of it, and the other 90 to 96% just ends up in the toilet, which means that's where your money's gone. I told you I've got Dutch blood in me. Dutch people don't like to waste money. I always want things at a better price, and I don't want to waste money. So what I'm suggesting you, as I say, you do is work with a doctor. It doesn't make sense to keep a child on Ritalin or Concerta or any other drug when there are terrible side effects. When you know after tonight that you can change their diet dramatically. Dr. Abram Hoffer, and I love this quote, is from Dr. Weston Price's book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Dr. Weston Price traveled around the world as a dentist, and he studied different types of people and how they ate and how it affects their teeth, but he noticed that it also affected their health. So if their teeth were in bad condition, if they had an overbite or their teeth were malocclusion, they all sort of squashed in the mouth. Whereas when you looked at people eating natural whole foods, they had these beautiful straight teeth, but once they'd been introduced to processed foods, they'd end up with these really skewed teeth. So in the book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, Dr. Hoffer says this in the foreword. He says, I suspect, he's talking about diet and how it affects behavior and health. I suspect that many of the people with psychiatric disorders today, the addicts, the high degree of violence, the tremendous number of degenerations such as diabetes, arthritis, etc., are the modern manifestation of this continuing degeneration. I have seen no experiments, however, which show what happens when the diet continues to get worse with time. I shudder to think of the final outcome. In my own practice, I'm now seeing children who are the second generation of junk-consuming peoples. The results are obvious and depressing. And if I look back, we see the same thing. We didn't have things like autism was diagnosed in the 1940s. As I say, ADD also in the last 100 years. But if I look back, it was like really rare. We never heard that terminology until I was married with kids. And people were like, oh, my kid's ADD. What does that mean? Nobody even knew what it meant. Attention deficit disorder, okay? So if you look back and you look at the attention deficit disorders, hyperactivity, mood swings, depression, anxiety, brain allergies, reactive hypoglycemia, autism, and other neural development disorders such as Asperger's syndrome, how common they're becoming in the last 30 years. I can see the obvious and depressing results that Dr. Hoffer mentions as well. It's really very, very sad. And that's why I'm on a mission to reach 1 million people, because I'd like 1 million people to get well. Get them onto our programs, get well so that they can all influence another 1 million people so that things can change, okay? All right. I'm just looking at the range of rates. I just don't want to run out of time. All right, so attention deficit, when you're looking at it, typically this is the list that they'll look at, often doesn't give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes at schoolwork or other activities. 2, often has trouble keeping attention on tasks or playing activities. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, and duties in the workplace. Often has trouble organizing activities, often avoids, dislike, or doesn't want to do things that take a lot of mental effort for a long period of time, such as schoolwork or homework. Often loses things needed for tasks and activities, such as toys, school assignments, pencils, books, and tools, is often easily distracted and often forgetful in daily activities. It sounds like most kids in most schools, okay? And today what's happening is they're just being told by the teacher in the class, parents are being told, please put your child on Ritalin or a Concerta, take her to this doctor. And they usually have a doctor they work with, puts them on the drug, and the child turns into an emotional zombie. So, if you look at this stuff, and I've listed all of this stuff in the notes and stuff, you could categorize most kids in these areas. Seriously, today, most of them you could categorize them in these areas. And what's the solution? Put them on a drug, or let's look at their diet and lifestyle. All righty. Already mentioned that. Barbara Reed Stitz, this is a fantastic book as well, called Nutrition and Behavior, says the results in hypoglycemia in people who are generally predisposed. Oh, she's saying refined sugar, as I explained to you, reactive hypoglycemia. When you eat refined sugar, your blood sugar shoots up, you overproduce insulin, blood sugar comes down, your blood sugar bottoms out too low, and then you suffer from reactive hypoglycemia. And Barbara Reed Stitz says it usually happens. This causes the area of the brain that controls forethought, planning, and moral behavior, and impulse control, solving, motor control, memory, judgment, to shut down, with a primitive area that controls appetite, aggression, and primitive responses to take over. This area of the brain that controls behavior and learning, the frontal lobe, is only fully developed at the age of 25. The studies now show 25 is that part of the brain. So if you're consuming sugar and alcohol before that age, that part of the brain is just going to continually shut down, and it takes a while for it to actually recover from what you're doing. We're actually stunting the full development of our brains. It's terrible. All right. If we look at the amount of sugar that's consumed, it's probably 120 kilograms per person per year in most westernized countries. And if you look at that, 120 kilograms per child. I don't touch refined sugar anymore. I know thousands of people that don't. That means the average person's consuming way more than this. So if you look at it, it's just, why are we even allowing it? It's a drug that actually makes people sick. But maybe that's the whole idea, because if they get sick, then they need medicine. And if they need medicine, they might need hospital and they might need surgery. There's a whole enormous business that rides on the back of this type of behavior. So what do you start with firstly, okay? People get overwhelmed. They're like, okay, how am I going to start with this? The best type of diet for a child with ADD, ADHD, and we'll look at aspergers and autism and some of the others. But I can tell you, we would say that the best diet for anybody whose brain is not working optimally is a whole food, plant-based, unprocessed diet that excludes white sugar of any type. Refined sugar of any type. When I say any type, you can use fructose simply because it doesn't upset the blood sugar, but it's not the best thing to use. Raw honey would be better. Raw maple syrup would be better. Natural apple juice would be better to sweeten with. Dates, raisins in a paste are better to sweeten with. That simply means you need to increase the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables and remove the processed fast foods. All right. Replace sugar with raw honey and fructose or maple syrup for baking. The more natural the sweetener, the better, and raw honey is probably the best. Fructose in fresh fruit is very stabilizing on blood sugar, so increase fruit and allow the child to eat as much as they like. You can use 100% natural fruit juices as a sweetener if you need to. Fresh fruit for breakfast is ideal. It will satisfy the body's need for glucose at the beginning of the day. But many ADHD kids have no appetite for breakfast when they wake up in the morning. So what worked for me with my daughter and works for me as well is I don't like eating first thing in the morning. A smoothie with nuts in it, nuts or seeds, closed handful per child, per adult, with fresh or frozen fruits like pineapples, mangoes, dragon fruit, a basic smoothies, pineapple for me, pineapples, nuts, freshly squeezed apple juice, and pro peas. Pro peas is protein from peas. It's got vanilla in it, makes it taste like a milkshake. It's delicious, it's natural, and it's 90% protein. So it helps to stabilize the blood sugar together with the nuts, which have got protein and fats. If you put protein and fats together with the fruit, it functions more efficiently. All right. So smoothies are ideal. And what you do is most ADD kids don't eat in the morning. They don't concentrate enough to eat in the beginning. So you give them your bottle, their sippy cup, whatever you need, and you put that in the car with them on their way to school, and they've got to drink it on the way. And you keep having to remind them because they're staring out the window and looking at their toes and drink your smoothie, drink your smoothie, drink your smoothie. And then you give them fresh fruit for your first break. And then with handfuls of nuts and seeds. And second break could be homemade popcorn, whole grain sandwiches, flax crackers. Some kids like hummus with carrots and peanut butter. But if you're going to give peanut butter, make sure it's 100% pure with no refined sugar in it, okay? You need to discuss with your child what sugar does to the brain. And as I said, feed your child their favorite meal, their favorite healthy meal before they go to a party, okay? The other thing that's essential to all children's brains is omega-3 and 6. Now, omega-6 is very easy to get hold of. You can have olives, you can have avocado, you can have raw nuts and seeds, but omega-3s are not that easy to get. And so I recommend that you take a flax oil supplement of some kind, not fish oil. Fish oil is highly processed. It's rancid within 2 hours of the fish dying, and then they extract it with heating and chemical solvents. And when you do that, you alter the fat, and it becomes highly carcinogenic in the body. Fish oil also contains cholesterol. So if you're taking it for cholesterol issues, and we're not talking about that tonight, you're taking something in that contains cholesterol. So we need to make sure that you are rather taking an omega-3 supplement. The best one that I've been able to find that works the best is called Omega. And I'm going to tell you a story of a child who was autistic. We got him on the Omega. And Yeah, you can use olive oil, for example, in a salad, or put some olive oil over a baked potato. All of that helps metabolize. And also, I encourage children to have barley life, which is your barley grass juice. You can make your own barley grass juice, okay? You don't have to buy it. This is just a convenient way that worked for me and works for many people. And why I use the barley life, it's the most nutritious and the most carefully extracted. They extracted it and they harvest at night so the sun can't damage the plant while they're harvesting. And then they extract the juice and it gets chilled in the harvesting machine, and it's taken that form to the factory where it's spray dried at room temperature. I don't know another company that does it. It keeps virtually all those nutrients intact. And they stabilize it with a bit of brown rice to stabilize it so it doesn't oxidize. It's tiny. And put a little bit of kelp in, which helps with iodine, which helps our thyroids work more efficiently, okay? So barley life and omega are a must as far as I'm concerned with any kid that's got any brain issues. The other thing is flora food to make sure that their digestive tract bacteria is in balance, because if those bacteria are out of balance, and they can be out of balance from parasites, from having taken antibiotics, from eating lots of processed and refined foods, you've got to get the gut healthy, you've got to get the endocrine system and the brain. You need the omega and the barley life for the brain and central nervous system. You need the flora food for the gut. And then you give the child either aloe vera jelly to drink, or which feeds the friendly bacteria, or you get them to eat a lot of fresh fruit. And that water-soluble fiber will also feed the friendly bacteria. All right. Okay, proper hydration is essential for the brain to work. And many children today don't drink water. In fact, I met an adult the other day at 45. He said, no, my father taught me not to drink water. He said, water is tasteless and it's meaningless. You don't need it. So he said, I only drink tea, and at least he drinks red bush tea, not normal tea with caffeine in it. So this guy, but on the other side of it, he's like drinks liters of Coke a day. So it doesn't make any sense. And I said to him, but you can't do that. Your body needs water. And that's when he told me he drank the red bush to the rooibos tea. And so I said, well, at least drink that on a regular basis. But if the brain is not getting enough fluids, then not your brain or your child's brain will work properly. And the immediate side effect of that is commonly is headaches. And today, so many kids get headaches. The first thing we say to a kid at our school with headaches, you haven't had enough water, go drink a glass of water. Every classroom has a water filter in it so that the kids can actually drink water in the classroom. The kid wants to pee, they're allowed to go to the toilet. They don't have to sit there and sort of hold it in because the teacher doesn't want them leaving the class. Children should be able to go to the bathroom, and they should be able to drink water throughout their time in the classroom, because they concentrate for long periods of time. They need water. All right, so make sure that your child has a water bottle with them all the time. Make sure it's always full. They should be drinking like 2 water bottles a day. That's the least water that a child should be drinking. But they have a little bit before breakfast, and a little bit in the middle of the morning, and a little bit before lunch, and a little bit in the afternoon, a little bit in the evening. And that way they're getting some right throughout the day, okay? The other way of doing this is make a jug of filtered water, and then just let it be easy for the kids. Like we have these glass water filters, which we put the carbon. It's called activated carbon in it, which is actually the burnt hulls of macadamia nuts that have been cleaned. And so that sits at the bottom, and the kids are like, what is that? And then we explain what it is. And it's got a little tap, so they just fill up their juice bottle all day long while they're in the classroom. Have water available for the children to actually drink. It's very important, okay? The teacher's saying that it's disrupting the class will say, would you prefer my child to be hyperactive and attention deficit or drink some water? Sometimes I say you just have to look at it and say, I've got to put my kid in another school. Symptoms of mild dehydration can be very difficult for a teacher to spot in a class. Some children just become irritable and tired and less able to concentrate. And by the time they get home, many children are complaining of tiredness or headaches, okay? And they're just lethargic and they don't want to do anything around the house, and they're flopping around on the floor. When you greet them in the car, have another bottle of water and say, here's some more water. Just maybe make them little bottles so they finish them before you get home. All right. You need to teach your children when they're not drinking enough water. They need to know when their urine is a dark yellow color and has a strong smell. They've not drunk enough water, and that's making me thirsty just talking about this. Urine should be the color of pale straw. If you don't know what straw looks like, Google it. But it's a pale kind of a blonde look to it. But anything darker, like if they have a strong smell, you haven't been consuming enough water, okay? Things that interfere with your child's brain, as I've already mentioned, things like preservatives, additives, colorants, refined sugar I've mentioned, but just to recap, things like heated fats, fried foods interfere, stop your body's, the child or an adult's body's ability to actually absorb and utilize the natural fats that we need for our brain to work properly. So if you're going to have something fried from a local fast food joint and then you're going to have some avocados, you're not going to benefit from it because those fried fats are going to block your body's ability to absorb that. Caffeine, which is found in chocolate, in green tea, it's found in raw cacao, it's found in organic cacao, raw cocoa. Whether you call it cacao or cocoa, it's the same bush, okay? It's found in normal teas, as I said, and green tea. Anything containing guarana usually contains twice as much caffeine as coffee, for example. Guarana is in a lot of supplements. It's in things like Red Bull, these energy drinks. A lot of them have caffeine and guarana in them. It just whip your adrenal glands, make you produce adrenaline, and it can actually make children quite aggressive. It can make them jumpy. They won't be able to sleep at night. They struggle to concentrate. The worst thing you can give to a child with a learning problem is caffeine. The worst. You've got to stop all of that. No Easter eggs, okay? No Easter eggs. No chocolate. Give them carob. Carob tastes like chocolate. Because it's not addictive, they don't end up eating it and eating it. Caffeine is addictive. It makes your nerve endings fire very rapidly, and then you need some more. Whereas you're meant to have adenosine lock into those nerve receptor cells, which calms down the central nervous system or the nerves in the body. Caffeine locks in there and then makes it fire too rapidly, which the kid initially feels like very perky. An adult will feel perky and on top of it. But it actually affects your short-term memory, so it's not a good thing to do. Gluten is the protein found in the grain, not the leaf of wheat, rye, oats, and barley. You do get gluten-free oats, but it's not made gluten-free. It is grown gluten-free. We get gluten-free oats from Finland, for example, because it doesn't grow in our country. I know there's some that grows in the United States. That means it has less than 2 parts per million. What gluten does is affect the central nervous system and the brain. It can cause problems with the endocrine system. That's the whole hormonal system. And that system is also intricately involved in the way the brain works. The pituitary gland manages the endocrine system. It feeds into the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus manages what goes on in the brain and central nervous system. So you can't separate your endocrine system and your brain and central nervous system at all. They work together all the time. And there's this sense of saying, oh, well, my kid's got this condition, so it must be something unique, and it's a different kind of a diet. And there are some different tweaking things you can do, but generally, if you're looking at any brain issues, if you're looking at autism, you're looking at a problem with the central nervous system, you're looking at a problem with the endocrine system. If you're dealing with attention deficit, it's a problem with the endocrine system, it's a problem with the central nervous system. If you're dealing with epilepsy, it's a problem with the brain and central nervous system. It's a problem with the endocrine system. It's just manifesting in a different way because the genetic makeup is different. So all of what I'm saying applies to all these brain conditions. And I know that's hard to accept because you think, but this is unique. It's not the same. But all of what I'm saying is going to help you and your child's brain to work optimally all the time. Okay? A lot of people find when they take gluten out of the diet that their thought processes become completely crystal clear. There's no more brain fog. Brain fog is commonly caused from gluten and can be caused from dairy products. Dairy products and gluten both have an inflammatory reaction in the body. Some can inflame the digestive tract and the kids can have sore stomachs. Some can cause inflammation in the sinuses. Some can cause inflammation in the brain, and then you've got a brain problem. Okay? Some can cause inflammation in the nerves, and you've got a central nervous system problem. So it's important to understand that we're going to manifest our symptoms differently by doing very much the same things, okay? Dairy products are cow's milk, cheese, and yogurt. And I know that you've been told yogurt is a wonderful food for you and that you must have it. It's all lies. Dairy products contain 25 protein fractions, and those 25 protein fractions can cause anything from sinusitis to otitis media, ear infections, allergic rhinitis, the runny noses, tonsillitis, gastrointestinal bleeding from the inflammation, and then you can end up with ulceration, and then you end up with H. pylori getting out of hand, and they say the H. pylori caused it, but it's actually the inflammation that caused it. And the H. pylori only come there when there's lots of pus and blood and gooey things from inflammation, okay? So we know that dairy products also affect the respiratory tract and the immune system and the endocrine, but everybody manifests differently. One child, as I said, could have asthma. The other one can put on weight. So stop thinking of it as a unique and different diet. When we eat a whole food, plant-based diet, the body responds and repairs itself. Dr. Colin Campbell, who wrote the China study, which is this most amazing book. If you've never read it, go out and buy it today. Order it online, get it. This book, The China Study by Dr. Colin Campbell. He tells you exactly what dairy products do to the body and why they're so harmful to the body. And it's part of the reason. We've increased the amount of dairy. When I was growing up as kids, we didn't have things like yogurt. Cheese was an absolute treat. And we had a bit of milk and cereal, which was usually diluted with water. But today it's milkshakes and it's ice cream and it's yogurt and it's flavored yogurts and it's yogurt ice cream, which, I mean, even I used to think that yogurt ice cream was better than normal ice cream because it's got yogurt in it and yogurt's so healthy. I used to make my own yogurt, so I'm not picking on anybody. I used to do this stuff. And I can tell you, it's absolute nonsense. There's no evidence anywhere that human beings need dairy products as a food. None whatsoever. It's the exact opposite. Cows need that. Human babies need their mother's milk for the first 2 years of their life. That's what we should be focusing on. Get all the babies breastfed, and then there's less likely to have these problems. Very often, the children with attention deficit orders and with learning problems have not been able to be breastfed because they're so niggly as kids, or the mom is working and she's under a huge amount of stress with this niggly kid that screams all the time that she gets stressed and can't feed. So if you understand all of this, then you don't think, oh, my child's got this terrible brain and I'm never going to be able to. Instead, you're thinking is, how can I solve this problem? That must be your continual question. How can I solve this problem? Are they suffering from a deficiency of essential fatty acids or a deficiency of Ritalin? Are they suffering from a deficiency of fresh fruit in their diet or suffering from a deficiency of Concerta? What we know is there are only good side effects of eating fresh fruit in the diet. There are many bad side effects of taking drugs. You've got to get this. Drugs don't cure, they suppress symptoms. They're just suppressing it. They're not fixing the problem. They're not making it go away. Changing the diet and the lifestyle makes it go away. Food additives. There's thousands of food additives. I can't even begin to list all of them, but I'd say things like colorants, yellow colors, red colors, unless they've got the red color from beets and the yellow from carrots and the green from barley grass juice, unless they've actually got natural colorant from natural fruits and vegetables, you can't have any additives or colorants in. Preservatives, sulfur dioxide, sodium metabisulfite, SO2, E220. It doesn't matter. It goes by different names. It does the same thing. It can cause hyperactivity, attention deficit in some kids. It could cause autism in other kids. It can cause urticaria in some kids. It can cause, which is hives. It can cause immune response in other kids, asthma in other kids. So the response is different. The cause is the same, okay? Use beets. A little bit of beets for pink color goes a long way. We make a strawberry ice cream, and the strawberries are so pale in color you can hardly notice it. So we just put a little bit, it's like a teaspoon in a whole batch of the dried ready beets powder, and it makes a beautiful, soft strawberry pink. But it's got beets in it, so it's actually more nutritious. All right. The bottom line, I keep telling people this. Give your God-made children God-made food and they'll have God-made health and their brain will work like a God-made brain. It's that simple, okay? Natural light and exercise is essential for the brain to work properly. So besides the diet, you've got to make sure that the kids are getting outside enough. Charlotte Mason, one of the great educationalists from a couple of 100 years ago, British-based woman, really believed that in summertime, children need to be outdoors for at least 4 to 6 hours a day. And during winter, 2 to 3 hours a day. She said kids have to get outside. Today, we know that natural light has an effect on the pineal gland and helps us sleep properly and stops depression. So we find that the brain, it's a little gland that's in the brain that's affected by the light coming into the pupil of your eyes. So you don't have to look at the sun, you just have to be outside. So when kids are exploring and playing in mud and water, but what do? We don't want our kids to get dirty. Don't take your shoes off, we say. You're going to get sick. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. The healthiest kids that we've seen, the kids that have no learning problems, the kids that have good muscle tone, the kids that have got good character, the ones that can focus, are the kids that come to our school that can't stand their shoes on their feet. They're running around discharging positive ions all day. When your positive ions building up from synthetic fabrics, from synthetic flooring, from just being in a synthetic environment in a normal house, these positive ions build up and make the body, throws the body out of balance. You can feel like you can't concentrate. You'll find your immune system doesn't work properly. So you'll find a whole lot of problems are going on because you're not discharging your positive ions. And one of the reason that kids can be so happy all the time, and they can be pretty chilled and they don't stress as adults. You'll see the kids running around outside barefoot are the ones. They're just discharging all the time. Those positive ions just discharge straight. This is not a weird esoteric thing. This is fact. Check it out. And it's ions, I-O-N, not A-R, not I-R-O-N-S, ions. They're discharging them. Kids are meant to touch things, climb trees. When they climb trees, they're discharging it. If you can't take your shoes off, go and hug a tree. That's where the tree hugging came from, was discharge your ions into the tree. Try and take your shoes off. We try and do that once a day, is take our shoes off and walk on the grass or walk on the beach or get it onto something natural. If I don't do that, I feel my feet actually burn at night. I get this burning feeling under my feet. Like, oh gosh. One night I got up at 3 o'clock, went outside and walked outside on the grass. And I got back into bed and that burning feeling was gone. But it can make you feel edgy. It can make your immune system not work properly. And it can make you feel irritated in your brain. It's very important to discharge it. Encourage your children to be outside. How? Go outside with them. Spend time outside. We don't have to manage them. You can go outside and get your spade and work in the garden a little bit. Start growing vegetables and teach them how to do it. They can grow their own carrots and you'll be growing some lettuce. Let everybody have a little patch. Start gardening. If you spent like 90 minutes in the morning outside between going for a walk and working in the garden, it's pretty easy. At our school, we take our kids for a walk and it's at least a 20-minute walk. Then they have another 2 breaks that they have. So by the time they get home, they've had at least full hour of natural light outside. Over and above that, if the weather's great, we actually do the lessons outside. We've got a whole lot of tables outside under a shady tree. The kids do maths outside. They read outside. They sit in a blanket. That's what it should be like. Kids don't have to be going mad and crazy outside. They can eat their meals. In summer, they can eat breakfast, lunch, and supper on a covered veranda so that they're not burning. In winter, it's not that easy, so you can have, maybe you're in the dining room, the sun's streaming in, and you can open the doors so they'll get the natural light in their eyes, at least from that. But you might find midday you can eat your meals outdoors in winter, unless it's 6 foot of snow. And do your best that you can. And you can get lights inside your house, full spectrum lighting that you can actually plug in, and globes that brings in the natural UV rays that you need for the child to work properly. At least let them go outside. You'll find kids in winter and rain want to be outside barefoot, unless they've been trained to always have shoes on their pale feet. Kids need to get outside. Today we have kids with not getting outside. They've got gross motor and fine motor problems. We let them outside. They start climbing trees. They're hanging on things, and it just improves literally within weeks. You can see it improve. Kids need to be outdoors. Okay. If you have a child that's attention deficit, put them in a garden that's got an enclosed fence around it. And when our kids come to school and they've had sugar, the attention deficit kids, if they've had sugar on the weekend because they were at grandma and grandma insisted on giving them sweeties and candy, we make them run around the field. There's a smallish field 3 times. We make them go and drink a glass of water and eat an apple or a banana. They've got to eat something. So we're teaching them to manage their brain. Brain's feeling jumpy. You need exercise, you need water, and you need something to eat that's naturally sweet. All right. Here's a wonderful thing. Scott, here's a case study. Diagnosed with possible ADD at the age of 5 after complaints from the nursery school teachers that despite having a good IQ, he was disruptive, but simply sitting still, and he had difficulty sitting still and was on the go all the time. Many tests later, he was finally placed in a remedial school for grade 1. The second half of the year, his teacher told us he was not coping academically and his self-esteem was therefore taking a knock. She suggested he would cope better on medication, and after several independent specialists confirmed, he was put onto Ritalin from Monday to Friday every week. Strangely enough, it was the doctor's suggestion that he needed the medication that seemed to hit us harder than the fact that he needed to attend a remedial school. In retrospect, I think it was the confirmation that our child had a problem that could not be solved by attending a special school, that he had also needed a Schedule 7 drug that was harder to accept. As parents, we experienced the full range of emotions this decision produced, and it was not a decision we took lightly by any means. We felt in denial in terms there must be a mistake with the diagnosis. It can't be that bad. Guilt in terms of what did we do wrong, and an overriding concern that our child was different and we knew so little about his disability. Lots and lots of research and reading later, we realized how fortunate we were that Scott's problems in comparison to many children with ADD were actually mild. Over the years, many people made comments like there's nothing wrong with him and he behaves like any boy his age. Many of these comments were made by well-meaning friends and grandparents who saw an active, naughty little boy just like any other, but never saw the frustration he experienced when trying to complete a tabletop activity. These comments further complicated our thought process as we didn't see our child in an academic situation each day, and we didn't have older children. We were not able to determine what normal behavior was anyway. There's no denying the Ritalin worked for Scott. Looking at the school book from one day to the next, no one would have thought that the writing was the same child. What a difference between the handwriting of the 9th of October and then he took the medication on the 10th on his first day of Ritalin. We could actually read it. During the year, Scott took Ritalin. We, in conjunction with his pediatrician and relevant teacher, took him off several 2-week test periods during the school term. On each occasion, the Connors reports were completed, and at the end of each period, based on the results, he went back on the medication. Interestingly enough, although the academic ability decreased dramatically while off the medication, so did his social skills and behavior. This was explained to us as a defensive reaction as a result of not coping in the classroom. We were fortunate that the only side effect he experienced was loss of appetite, so we tried to make up for this on weekends, although we found that the medication stayed in his system for a couple of days. School holidays were more successful. Scott's tendency to being underweight resulted in me encouraging the intake of any food, regardless of the nutrient value. In fact, the more calories, the better. Everything I avoided in order not to put on weight. I encouraged Scott to eat. An average day's consumption would begin with cereal, sugar-coated with added sugar, and milk, eggs, toast, and fruit juice. School lunch would include a sandwich on some wheat product. Chelsea buns were the most popular, along with some sort of treat, normally a sweet, a bag of crisp, sugar-coated dried fruit sticks, or a chocolate bar. This was accompanied by a 750ml bottle of flavored energy drink. Ouch. On arriving home from school, it was more cereal, perhaps a few biscuits, perhaps another treat if I wasn't looking. This was sometimes accompanied by a glass of commercial milkshake. Only chocolate flavor would do. Dinner consisted of a protein, starch, and veggies, and was often accompanied by more cold drinks, more of his favorite energy drink or fruit juice. I had to say, we went through lots of air freshener. Obviously, his stomach did not smell good after all of that. In April this year, after years of experiencing digestive discomfort, Scott was tested and found positive for gluten and lactose intolerance. In addition to being taken off these products, it suggested we take him off animal protein short-term to give his system time to settle. 2 days later, while in search of gluten-free products, I bought a copy of your book. I read fast. Overnight, it was goodbye to sugar, colorants, and preservatives. And 2 weeks later, after discussing this with the pediatrician in the school, it was goodbye to Ritalin as well. It was suggested that Scott take plant-based supplement. For moral support only, believing I was relatively healthy, I agreed to join Scott on his healthy diet. For the past month, we have stuck religiously to our plan. It's not always been plain sailing, but must be said, it has been a lot easier than I expected. In a moment of optimism, I gave away all the no-nos in the pantry. In retrospect, it was the best thing I could have done, but how I missed dunking the rusks in my afternoon tea. We tried every possible type of milk substitute. I know the contents of each shelf at health shops in our area. I can tell you the ingredients of most of these products we eat, and I have become an expert on ways to disguise nuts and seeds in just about any meal. As Marianne so rightly points out, children are not the least bit concerned about the nutrient value of their food. They're not. It must just taste nice. That's all. It's like men and children. It must look good, taste nice, smell good. Don't tell me what's in it. So, where to now? The Connors report conducted yesterday showed there are still areas in the classroom where Scott has difficulty. However, the difference between the test and the one conducted 6 months ago is that the problem areas are manageable. He can now cope without the Ritalin. All right, and me, 42 years old today and feeling better than I have for years. The main difference is I have more energy and I feel healthier. I'm really enjoying the flavor of my food and I don't experience a heavy feeling after eating my meals. We still have a long way to go, but in conclusion, if I could manage our ADD child all over again, I would put his diet first and the medication last. There you go. Some of the common side effects of taking Concerta, Ritalin, dexedrine, Pemolin, Silert, Tofranol. These are some of the things that are given to these kids. Nopramin, Satapres, Prozac, and Paxil. Ritalin appears to be the drug of choice. It was prescribed in such large quantities in 1993 that Ciba-Geigy, the manufacturer of Ritalin, ran out of it. Ritalin is a Schedule 7 drug, which means it is a controlled substance, and careful records have to be kept regarding its usage. The overall concern for all controlled substances is their potential to cause not only physiological damage, but addiction and abuse. The relevance of Ciba-Geigy having run out of Ritalin in 1993 is this. Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, put manufacturing limits on controlled substances over a period of 1 year, and all of the drug dispensed in that year must be accounted for. When Ciba-Geigy ran out of Ritalin before the year was over, special permission had to be obtained in order to manufacture greater quantities of the drug for the following year. But in the interim, the shortfall caused near panic amongst the parents whose children were on Ritalin, as at that time no other method of treatment had been used successfully to manage ADD. It must be pointed out that the popularity of treatment with Ritalin is, in many physicians' opinion, not an indication of the drug's merit. Rather, it is an alarming reflection of society's need for a quick fix solution to a very debilitating condition, the underlying cause of which is not being given due attention, okay? So it's a big problem. Everybody's just reaching for medication, not looking at the side effects. The side effects are hectic. I have several stories to tell, but we're running out of space and time. Ritalin and Concerta are known as methylphenidate. They're central nervous system stimulants. It affects chemicals in the brain and nerves that contribute to hyperactive activity and impulse control. They are used to treat attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's indicated for use in children from 6 years and up to the age of 65 in adults. Okay. Do not use methylphenidate if you're using an MAO inhibitor, which is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. It's a class of medication used to treat depression. So if you're on antidepressants and Ritalin, you shouldn't be doing those two together. 2 years ago, a local kid was on antidepressants and Ritalin, and he took his own life. 13 years old, in grade 8. There's a whole long list of drugs you shouldn't be on. You need to look up the side effects. All right. There is so much. Honestly, one of the more recent side effects that have emerged is suicidal ideation. It didn't come out in the beginning, but it's showing up now. It's very common. There are case studies. I've got the case reports. They're in the book that show very clearly how children suffered from suicidal ideation. In other words, they talk about it, they think about it, they want to do it. When you take them off the drug, that goes away. And that's reason enough to try not to have them on that, okay? I think the big problem is that parents are bullied into taking medication by the schools. They'll say, we're not going to teach your child. But if you're take a school holiday, change the child's diet, change your own diet for that matter, and see the difference, okay? There's several other things that can affect the brain. Heavy metals, for example, mercury, which is found in all seafood that comes out of the sea. It's also in our amalgam fillings. Lead attacks the central nervous system, causing symptoms such as feeling run down, nervousness, depression, apathy, hyperactivity, and mental retardation in children. Dr. Carl Pfeiffer did a lot of work in this area in the 1970s and 1980s. And he said that lead is such an important cause of hyperactivity that tests should be run on children diagnosed as hyperactive in order to determine their blood lead level. And it's one of the reasons why we should be using unleaded petrol until we probably find preferably an electric car. But then there's also issues with what goes into the batteries in their electric car. But pollution is a big transporter of heavy metals that we're exposed to. And that's why it's more and more, this problem's getting worse and worse. And when we look at the lists of these diseases, as I don't know whether I mentioned it earlier, is that these conditions are worse in big cities like in westernized countries. So you find them in a lot of European countries. You'll find them in the United States. There's hardly any diagnosis of these in African countries. You'll find high levels of autism, for example, and attention deficit amongst children in cities like Hong Kong, but in rural China, unheard of. So what's the difference? You've got a lot of technology. You've got no grass or earth to put your feet on. Very little natural, unprocessed foods, lots of processed foods, lots of technology, lots of positive ions building up in the body. Kids are being raised in apartment blocks. They don't even get to go outside, never mind take their shoes off. So we need to change the way we're doing things. We have a school, when the kids come here, they say they're so glad they can climb a tree. And we trim our trees so that the branches are low down. They can climb them low down. But we explain to them, you can't hang on a branch that's not thicker than your wrist. So they've got to compare their wrist and say, I can't hang on that because it will break. So we teach them. And they'll just hang out in the tree the whole break. And they love the fact that they can climb trees. They live in an apartment block. There are no trees to climb. Or in the school they went to before, they weren't allowed to go near the trees at all. If our kids break a branch in a tree because they hung on one that was too thin, then they have to work in the garden and make the garden look better. So it could be weeding or raking up leaves or working in the compost heap. That's what they got to do. All right. Other metals are mercury, cadmium, and arsenic, and they can be found in fish oil, contaminated sea, amalgam fillings, environmental toxins such as pesticides. I hate talking about this because it sounds like I'm trying to be a fearmongerer, but we've got to be aware of the things we're using in our house. You can't just use any cleaning materials. You've got to use stuff that's biodegradable, environmentally friendly. If it's friendly to the environment, it's friendly to humans. We have a cleaning substance. We have a soap powder, and we have the cleaning substance for the dogs, the kids, the walls. We do our dishes with this, and we have a super cleaner, which will get grease of things. All of them biodegradable naturally. Those are just the 3 things we have in our house at any given time. Nothing else. And we've been using them for years. Probably our best-selling items. People just know it and they don't touch anything else because you don't get allergies from it on your skin. You don't start sneezing if you smell it. There's no strong smell. There's natural lemon or orange juice in it. And so we've got to look at what's in our homes. We've got to look at where we're living. If you're living maybe you're living in a big house on a busy road. It's not a good place to live. Not for you, not for your kids. You need to live further back from the traffic. Or start promoting traffic quietening things like speed humps or traffic lights to get people to slow down. From a dietary perspective, the best thing is to eat foods containing lots and lots of natural antioxidants. So all your raw fruits and your vegetables. Antioxidants destroy free radicals. Free radicals damage the brain. They damage your nerves in the body. They damage your cells in the body. So we've got to have lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. Have bowls of fruit and veggies all over in your house. You're going to find apple cores under the back seat of the car or the back of your car. You're going to find them under the kids' beds. But I'd rather have apple cores lying around or peels of fruit than have a child that's on a Schedule 7 drug and who's not coping with life. It doesn't matter. You can rescue the apples out, peel the dark parts of them, dice them up or use them in the juice extractor to make freshly extracted juicing. Okay. All right. Dyslexia, we've mentioned about the sugar. Brain allergies is a term coined by Dr. Philpott in his book, Philpott. It's Philpott. Dr. Philpott. He wrote a book called Brain Allergies, which relates specifically to an effect upon the brain by any food or substance that results in abnormal behavior or health. It's really worth reading. It's got amazing stuff in it. I mean, he found people becoming completely psychotic just by consuming wheat, even if it was whole wheat. Now, that's rare, but it just shows we all react very differently. I mean, I grew up eating whole wheat bread. The worst thing that happened to me, I didn't realize I was gluten intolerant. I got brain fog and I got those pimples on the back of my arm, which is a form of dermatitis. So all of that will clear up if you're on a gluten-free diet as well. The skin issues, teenage acne clears up, dry skin in adults clears up, dry eyes clears up when you take gluten out. But you might have a brain allergy, which means that you're eating something and it's creating this psychotic behavior or aggressive behavior. So if gluten intolerant, then you need to avoid all gluten, basically. Anxiety and panic attacks in kids and in adults, number one cause of that is caffeine. Caffeine is found everywhere. I've already spoken to you about it. Tea, coffee, green tea, colas, guarana, energy drinks. It's found in so many things, chocolates, raw cacao, organic cacao. They all contain caffeine. And people are going around saying, oh, you've got to give this organic chocolate to your children. I mean, it's just bizarre. Don't they know what caffeine does to them? It's too bizarre, okay? You've got to have natural fats in your diet. Barley Life, Omega, those are the two things. Get the refined sugar out, get the caffeine out. I remember this, I coached netball for my oldest daughter, Melissa, when she was 12 or 13 years old. She's now 42. And one of the girls in the team had this asthma pump. She couldn't breathe from the panic attack. So she'd take this asthma pump and be, and then she'd play. And in the middle of the match, she'd have a panic attack and she'd have to come off and use her asthma pump. But she was having a panic attack, which was affecting her lungs. She didn't have asthma. So I said to her one day, why don't we try you without any caffeine? Because I noticed that she would sit there eating a chocolate bar. So she and her mom agreed that they would do this. All her panic attacks went. All went. 2 months later, she's back eating chocolates. I'm like, and now? I don't understand. And she said, no, my mom says I can eat chocolates. I don't have to not eat them. She doesn't want me to be deprived. Depriving your children of panic attacks? Now, that's really mean and cruel. I don't get it. It's really sad when I meet parents who simply won't change their child's diet. It's almost like parents feel threatened and uncomfortable with dietary change. And it's almost like, well, if I change my child's diet, then it means that I had a role to play in the way they ate. And I'm not pointing fingers. I did stupid things with my own diet, with my kids' diet, just out of ignorance. But once you hear this, try it out. It's worth trying out. You're going to make your life better for your child, never mind yourselves. It's not about blaming yourself and if it's diet. It's like, if it's diet, then it's my fault. It's just we do things because that's how we were raised. But now we can learn and we can move on, okay? Now, autism and aspergers are two related conditions which will affect a child's speech, social interactions, and intellectual response. It's become a lot. We had Jenny McCarthy, who was girlfriend to Ace Ventura. What's his name? The actor. Oh, crumbs, I can't think of his name right now. Ace Ventura, that one. My husband is sitting here. He'll try and think of it too. She spoke a lot about it and represented autism for many people in the United States. And so a lot more people started noticing it because of that. But what I'm concerned about is ADD and ADHD and autism and Asperger's. Everybody will tell you we don't know what causes it. We don't know what causes it, and we don't know how to fix it. But we can give you some things to help with the symptoms. That's the reality of it. I'm just reading an overview from the Mayo Clinic. It says it's a spectrum disorder in a condition related to brain development that impacts how a person perceives and socializes with others, causing problems in social interaction and communication. This order also includes limited and repetitive patterns of behavior. Like, I used to do this stuff at home. I used to do this. I had a problem with social interaction and communication. My father had it. That's why he drank. He was very uncomfortable socially, so he drank alcohol to make him relax and feel like he became an alcoholic. So he probably suffered from a bit of an issue there, genetic. The term spectrum in autism refers to the wide range of symptoms and severity. There's not one kid can have one. Some kid can be rocking their head, rocking and banging their head against the wall. Others can just not make eye contact. You can't talk to them. Asperger syndrome, which is considered to be a milder form of autism, and I'm finding a lot of adults are being diagnosed with a kind of antisocial, like my dad was. He was probably Asperger's. He was always very much in his head. My mother would talk to him and he wouldn't answer her ever. He just never heard it. Then she'd shout at him and he would like, what? He just got so inside his head, and I was much the same. Begins in childhood. I'm just reading those things. It says often children show problems of autism within the first year. And it's saying there is no cure for autism spectrum disorder. Intensive early treatment can make a difference. And what causes it? Having an immediate family member with autism. Genetic mutations. What are genetic mutations from? Did you know caffeine caused genetic mutations? So does alcohol. Fragile X syndrome and other genetic disorders. Being born to older parents. Low birth weight. Metabolic imbalances. Metabolic imbalances are caused directly from what we put in our mouths. Exposure to heavy metals and environmental toxins. A history of viral infections. Fatal exposure to medications like valproic acid or thalidomide. All right, so what do we do with autism, okay? I can tell you this much. I haven't come across an attention deficit child, an autistic child, somebody with dyslexia from a family who has made the transition onto a whole food, plant-based diet. Every single family that's moved onto a whole food, plant-based diet with no dairy, no gluten in their diet, no refined sugar, and no caffeine, and they're getting natural fats. All of them, these kids have gone back to normal behavior, almost normal behavior if it's been really bad. They've improved dramatically. And the one child that I think of particularly, I've got his story here. He was 7 years old and he was not able to speak other than saying, Mom, Dad, yes, no, 4 words. Monosyllables, no eye contact whatsoever. Let me just see if I can find his story here. Okay. From memory, I'll tell you. Anyway, so he came and I said to her, what's his diet like? So we got out the gluten, we got out the dairy. They'd already had no preservatives, no refined sugar in his diet, no colorants. They had that out. And I said, okay, so what's he on? He was on intestinal flora from another company. He was on fish oil. And that was basically on. I said, get him onto the omega capsules. Get him onto flora food because it's human bacteria, not just an animal bacteria. And we got him onto the Barley Life to help the omega-3s in the omega capsules make the conversions needed for the brain to work properly. 2 weeks, I'm not kidding, 14 days. That mother came rushing in. She said, Marianne, I cannot believe the difference in my child. He's speaking in full sentences. He's making eye contact with anybody who talks to him. He had a younger brother who was a year younger than him. The younger brother was at a normal school and didn't have any issues. And this child was literally on a par with this kid and just getting better and better. 2 weeks is all it took for this child. Omega, Barley Life, Flora Food, and I gave him aloe vera drinking gel because it's a really good prebiotic. It feeds the probiotic bacteria. It was completely phenomenal. And, looking at where we find more ADD, I mean, Hong Kong's got the highest level, not China, South Korea, United States, Japan, Ireland, Switzerland, Canada, Denmark, Singapore, Belgium, Estonia, and Finland. These are pretty much countries where dairy products have been introduced, processed foods, they're pretty developed. But as I mentioned earlier on, when children are exposed to a very westernized culture, they're indoors a lot, they're always wearing their shoes, they are exposed to a lot of technology, a lot of synthetic fabrics, they're indoors and they're building up these positive ions, all of that, because when we look at the countries where people are poorer and their children play outside, they just go out the door and they play, and they're barefoot. There's very, very little autism and attention deficit disorder in that community. You've got to ask yourself, all right, what we do know is that China, autism was only diagnosed in 1980. It's the first time they saw a case of it. And we know that the fast food outlets are now in America, whereas in the United States, it was diagnosed in 1943. All right, let's get on to epilepsy. I'm sorry, this is a brief overview, but it gives you something to go on in the meantime. Epilepsy should not be understood as a single disorder, but it's also a syndrome with vastly divergent symptoms. It's very much like autism, not in that it's the same thing. You've got different types of epilepsy. You've got different types of autism, okay? Not all epilepsy may respond to diet, but it is worth a try. I have seen every single child that I've dealt with has improved. Some have reversed completely, okay? And I'm going to read you the story by this mom, which is actually in my book, Healthy Kids, and it's in this document, so if you do get the document. She says, when we started eating according to the natural way, there was an immediate improvement in my children's health. Brett, who has had asthma and who was on Becatide and Ventolin twice a day for almost 2 years, was slowly able to stop the medication. Mark, who has had asthma from birth and who had to have 9 courses of antibiotics in the first year of his life, relied permanently on many cough mixtures, nose drops, and various asthma medications such as Zadaten, Lomudol, Microfillin, Nulin, and Theodore. Like his brother, he was also eventually put onto Becatide and Ventolin twice a day. After the transition to the natural way, I was able to wean him slowly off all his medication. It's now 2.5 years later, and both Brett and Mark are still off their medication. On the odd occasion, when they eat junk food at a party, then they start to sniff and cough again. This confirms that they do not eat correctly, then their health suffers. Although I had joint success with Brett and Mark, I did not believe that diet could improve epilepsy. My son Gary has had epilepsy since he was 3 years old. He suffered major seizures and continual absences and had to take 5 tablets a day of 2 different kinds of medication to control his condition. Gary had been on this medication for 4 years when we made the transition to the natural way. Only 4 months later, he was able to reduce his tablets to 3 per day. And for the first time in 4 years, he presented with a normal EEG. Gary continued to improve, and with the permission of the neurologist, he was slowly taken off all his medication. He has now been on all of his medication for 7 months and has not had any seizures since. Cynthia's motivation for changing her children's diet was to sort out their health problems related to their respiratory tract. It was only once they had made the change that she noticed not only an improvement in the EEG, but in their schoolwork as well. I remember clearly the day Cynthia came and showed me how her son Mark's school report had changed. Gone with the mood swings and the bad behavior, so too the lack of concentration. In fact, his handwriting had changed to such an extent that it looks as if somebody else was doing his work. The teacher brought the books and she showed them to me. One looked like a spider had crawled across the page. The other was just this beautiful work. And then I spoke to Cynthia nearly 20 years since the children changed their diet. And the last time I spoke to her, her eldest son was 18 years old and still doing well. Cynthia herself was so excited about the results and spread the word of good health to anybody who would listen. And who wouldn't if you saw such results? It's important to remember these changes didn't happen overnight, okay? In the case of Cynthia's family, the improvement was pretty dramatic, but she still weaned them off slowly with the help of her doctor off the medication. So often we find that families will change their children's diet, and because a child doesn't get instantly better in 2 days, they're like, oh, this is not working. Take the dairy products out. It can take 6 weeks, with some people 3 months to get rid of all the mucus. Usually it takes about 100 days. That's why we have a program called 100 Days to Health, to get to a place where you're actually seeing vast improvement. But usually within a couple of days, you start seeing improvements, little improvements here, little improvements, and that'll encourage you. And if you need to be learning more about the 100 days is really just a program. You learn little bits and pieces, but the best program to go on to is a 365 because you learn so much about the brain, the central nervous system, the endocrine system in tiny bite-sized pieces. It's not like studying at university or having to write exams, just like little sections with little bits. So you learn about the frontal lobe in the brain, and then you learn about the primitive part, and then you learn about this part and another part. in little bite-sized pieces, and you learn out which food and which activities affects this negatively. So you really understand why you're doing it, because if you just do what I tell you to do on the 100 days and you don't understand the whys, it's so easy to just go back to your old way of eating because it's just so convenient. You don't have to read labels anymore, and you don't have to ask people what they're going to have at the party or feed your kids before they go. So very often we slide back into our old lifestyle because it's the effort that's required, okay? So where do you start, okay? All the research is showing that the people whose brains work the best are the people that follow a whole food, plant-based diet. That's natural food, the way we're intended to eat it. And when we do that, your body is able to repair itself. It can take time, especially with the brain and central nervous system. But I've seen my daughter recover from major surgery from being in a car accident where she broke 2 vertebrae in her neck. And yes, they took some bone out of her hip and then fused it with screws, but literally in the space of 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks after surgery, they're saying, you're normal, you can go back to doing whatever you were doing before, and you're completely well. So the bone is fused, everything's fixed into place, and it's just the body repairs itself when you give it the opportunity to do it, okay? Guidelines are given to you on the 100 Days to Health. It's in my book, Perfect Health. It's definitely in the book, Perfect Kids. And if you're wanting to get the little booklet, I'll tell you now that what you need to do. Mentioned all of this stuff, okay? All right. So you need to take a long, hard look at your family's diet and make the changes needed. If you don't know where to start, the 100 Days is a good start. If you're feeling like you need more information, 365, My Year of Health, is the program to go on. And because I really encourage most people to do the 365, because it's so holistic and covers so many different areas in your life. It's 12 body systems and 12 pillars of health that really, and you get a lot of recipes and you get all the books, and you can do the 100 days, so it's included in that. The 365, what I've asked my husband to do, and he's got a coupon for you, is to give you access to the 365 with a discount of 20%. Have I got that right, Mark? Mm-hmm. 20% discount, you get the coupon, and it gives you that discount. Doesn't matter what country you live in, you'll get the 20% discount with a coupon. This will only last until the end of June. So on the midnight, on the 1st, after 1 minute past midnight on the 1st of July, it expires. Over and above that, you're going to get this 30-page document that's for my notes. There's so much information here. I can't give it all to you. I've given you the tip of the iceberg because it can be so overwhelming if you have all the stuff flying at you. And so it's important that you know you just start with little bits of things that you can do. You start with things like eat some raw food before you have your cooked food. Eat an apple or some grapes before you go and have candy and chocolate. Make sure that when you're craving salty things, you're getting natural fats. These are easy things to do. So you get a 20% discount and you'll get this book for free. It will be available for sale within the next 2 weeks. You'll be able to buy it online and download it in PDF, but I will give it to you completely for free, plus 20% off. So you get it for free if you sign up before the 1st of July on the 365 program. So you've got, as I say, what are we today? The 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. You've got 3 full days to sign up and get the program. You're going to get 4 recipe books, actually 5 recipe books, 4 of my books, Healthy Kids, Perfect Health, Take Control, and Perfect Weight. You're going to get a seasonal eating chart. You're going to get a food combining chart. You're going to get 12 detox programs to, literally in the 365, you're going to get everything that you need to be healthy for the rest of your life and never have to have medical expenses again. Over and above this, I've asked Mark for people that are already on the 365 to make this a 20% discount available for anybody who wants to study our natural health courses online. They're amazing. I meet with you every single week. On the 365, I meet with you on Wednesday night or Thursday, my mornings for the Australian people and New Zealand people. we'll send you all that information. And on Thursday evenings, I meet every single week with our students. So our students get a lot of attention from me because I need people to help me change the world. I can't do this on my own. And even if you're not doing the course, you can still tell other people and become a facilitator, and we can send you that information as well. But for now, there's 20% discount on all our nutrition courses, 20% on the 365 programs. Plus, when you sign up for this program, the 365, you will get this booklet on learning and behavioral problems and brain problems. Our students, our NHN students, they get everything. They'll get this booklet when it's ready, and they'll get the next booklet when it's ready. Every time I'll do a webinar, I will do a booklet that goes with it. Because people very often, it's too much information. We spend quite a lot of time on editing and laying it out. And I just added more stuff as I was preparing for this. So I've just give me 2 weeks and you'll have this book, 10 days. This book will be emailed to you, but you do need to sign up for the 365. And Mark should have put the link. You put the link in the box for the courses and the 365. If you get completely overwhelmed by this and need to actually speak to a real person, then you can email info@wholeworldwell.com. Okay, info@wholeworldwell. That's our mission, to make the whole world well.com. And if you do that, you talk to Claudia. If you forget her name, she doesn't mind. And Claudia will make sure that you get everything you need, that you get your coupons, and so that you can get the discount and you can get the booklet, okay? If you're doing the course, of course, you get this book as well. And any of our existing students will have this book sent to them as well. So the students that are out there listening, don't panic. You can send this YouTube recording to any of your friends or family anywhere in the world. And I do recommend that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you will be notified when this has been edited and put live. It'll be emailed to you, and you'll be able to, or you'll get the notification if you are subscribed to our YouTube. If you're not notified, you have to wait till an email, or you need to be in a facilitator group, and it's a little bit more complicated. But if you always want notification of new stuff, we're going to be interviewing quite a few people who've walked amazing journeys and turned their health around. People that have supervised their own fasts for 22 days, and people that have recovered from severe heart issues, people that have recovered from some major health issues. I'm going to be interviewing them. So those interviews, there are already existing interviews like that. There's lots of recipes on there, lots of interviews, but you're wanting to know when the new ones are coming out, then make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You just click on it, and it's pretty easy stuff. All right, Mark's got some questions he wants to ask me, or have you answered most of them, Mark?
There's a couple here.
Okay.
What are you needing when you crave bread?
What are you needing when you crave bread? The most common cause of craving carbohydrates, whether it's bread or potatoes, is your body's needing more serotonin. And so what carbohydrates do, it actually gives us this like high. It raises our serotonin levels. Sorry, too much talking. So carbohydrates raise our serotonin levels. So the best way to stop yourself craving, and this is why it often happens in winter, is we don't get enough natural light. So if we get outdoors and we're getting natural light, make sure you have no contact lenses or glasses over your eyes. You can have a hat or a cap on, just go for a walk at least 20 minutes outdoors, and you should find that you won't be craving bread and carbohydrates. If you're craving bread and you can't have gluten, there are gluten-free breads out there. There are rice crackers that you can have. You can have baked potatoes. You can have sweet potatoes. You can have rice noodles. You can have a whole lot of things that are gluten-free. That's not the complication. But this continual craving for bread, it's actually like a bit of an addiction, because you get addicted to the serotonin high that you get. Serotonin makes you happy and makes you feel good. And so bread makes us feel good and makes us happy, but it can clog up our digestive tract. It can affect our endocrine system if it's got gluten in it. So it's best to get gluten out of most people's diets, and go for a walk first, and then come back and eat a natural unprocessed carbohydrate or a gluten-free loaf if you're having problems with digestion and weight and skin. Gluten affects the skin, makes it dry, can cause acne, can affect your digestive tract, can affect your brain and central nervous system. So it's ideal not to have it. And it's because it's been over-processed. We've eaten it with sugar. Now we've produced antibodies against it. And then the antibodies are so similar to some of the gluten protein, so similar to some of the protein in our body, that when we eat it, it attacks us and we get autoimmune diseases like arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, all of those autoimmune diseases, even diabetes. Take gluten out. Any autoimmune disease, you've got to take gluten out of your diet completely. And there are lots of options. But when you join the 365, you can meet with me on a weekly basis. I don't do all this talking and training like this. I answer questions. That's what I do. So you ask me questions, I answer them. And then some people will share their wonderful stories as well. It's a wonderful system. Weekly with me, daily in your social media group. You can ask questions. You can share photographs of things you're eating, things you've made. It's actually a really exciting, fun journey to go on. People are loving it. I have never in my entire life had so many emails, notifications from people as how much they absolutely love the program. They just cannot stop raving about it because they feel like they're in control of their health again. We've come through a tough time, man. You know, you've got a kid that's autistic, or you've got attention deficit problems, and we've gone through lockdowns, and there's the second lockdown and a third lockdown, and everybody's in the state of fear. Can I tell you something? The immune system is perfectly designed to protect itself from everything, okay? But if we don't feed our bodies properly, it can't do that. And it's the most amazing, amazing system. And that's something I'll speak on another time. I think I have covered it previously, but the more I've studied now in the last sort of year or two about this and understand how incredibly intelligent the immune system is, it can nail any virus or bacteria. And that's why some people are like amazingly healthy. Mark and I haven't had a doctor's bill for over 30 years because we look after our body. But it's fun. This food is delicious. There's nothing that tastes gross. Honestly, you don't have to live on goji berries for the rest of your life. It's delicious stuff. Mangoes and, oh my word, such delicious things. Gluten-free pizza. Once you've eaten it, you'll never eat a normal pizza. It's got way more flavor. It's just too delicious for words. So don't think like, oh, I've got to give up everything. You're going to start focusing on adding good things to your existing diet. Do the best that you can. Any more questions there, Mark?
Yes. How do I get my child to drink barley life when he won't even have shakes or smoothies?
How do I get my child to drink barley life? Well, I would give him capsules. Will he swallow a capsule? How do I get my child? I'm going to answer that question to eat anything healthy when he doesn't like this texture and doesn't like that flavor and doesn't like this. There is a product called Barley Life Extra that's got fruit in it. So it's got a natural sweet taste and it's sweetened with herbal sweeteners like stevia. I don't like it because I don't want my barley to be sweet. But if you drink that, it actually tastes very nice, like a juice. It tastes like a cold drink. You can have it with cold water and ice in it. And most kids love that, or give them the capsules to swallow. That would be better. They don't want to have smoothies. You've probably got tactile problems. But once you start getting the Omega and the Barley Life into him, if he won't take the Omega capsules and won't swallow a capsule, I would make the Barley Life Extra. You can put a bit of apple and grape juice in there extra if you wanted to. And then I would put some flax oil, or I'd take the Omega capsules and snip them open and squeeze at least 3 to 6 of them in there. That's what they need if they've got brain or learning problems, and get them to have it. You can freeze that into ice lollies. It's very pleasant. It's very sweet. I find it too sweet for me. But basically, that's where I would start with. In the meantime, try and sneak green things into other places. Like we make corn fritters with cilantro, and you can put spinach in there, and getting the kids to eat green things in that way, at least. You've got to get creative. Chop things very finely. Celery, spinach, you can't even see it. Very, very finely, and put it into cottage pie and put it into bolognese sauce. And you've got to learn to be sneaky and hide food away. Hide the healthy food away from kids that have tactile issues. And you've got to just say to him, to your child, continually every day, I love you so much that I want to feed you healthy food so you can be strong and healthy. And that's why in our house now, we're only having healthy food. So in this home, we're eating healthy food. If you don't want to eat it, you can have some fruit. As long as that child eating fruit, they're at least eating lots of antioxidants, and that's going to help them. So do the best you can, and then include lots and lots of fruit and a variety, and have bowls around. Let him feel like he's in charge of his health, that he can help himself. And if all he wants to eat is bananas or just apples, that's fine. Blood chemistry changes and the body changes, and it takes about 100 days, but slowly and slowly and slowly. And as people said, some of them on 2 weeks they're on the programs, and they're like, I can't believe it. I don't even want the bad things that I used to eat. I'm not craving them anymore. And they can actually feel their blood chemistry change. And that will happen to him as well. Just, as I say, sneak it in everywhere you can and make him feel like he has options and choices. Otherwise, everything becomes a battle. Some more?
Here's a good report. My child is ADHD, and I was trying to explain to him how to drink water because he wouldn't. He started on the 100 days last Friday, and he drank 8 glasses yesterday and felt so good.
That's amazing. You didn't hear that? I'm going to repeat it. This is a child who's ADHD, ADD or ADHD. They're on the 100 days, and the 100 days tells you to drink water. And he started drinking water, and yesterday drank 8 glasses of water on Friday and is feeling absolutely amazing. She doesn't say how. Is it his energy or his brain? Or the brain needs water. And as I said, dehydration of the brain means the brain's not going to work properly. We're always looking for something complicated, and sometimes it might just be something like water. Water and fruit. Start with those 2 things. Get them drinking more water. I used to take 100% pure fruit juice, like strawberry juice and mango juice, things that have got more color in them, and then I'd freeze them in ice cubes, put them in a Ziploc bag. And if my kids were going to drink water because they didn't want to drink it, I said, you can have 3 of these ice cubes as long as you drink them in a glass of water. And then they put different colors in it and they drink it, because kids love ice, especially if it tinkles in the glass like that. One way to get them to drink water is with frozen 100% pure fruit juice. Okay, any more, Mark?
Okay, last one. My kid is always itching at night and in the morning. It's also a challenge to get him to go barefoot outside. I suggested that she look at getting Para-90.
Okay, so the child get very itchy at night and in the mornings, won't go outside without shoes. The child could have parasites, especially if you itch at night, especially if in the anus area or even the skin, usually at night, indicates, or grinding teeth, clenching, very common cause of parasites. It's a good thing to do with children that have brain problems and brain issues and learning issues, is to give them Para-90 at least once a year. If they're vegetarian, if they are eating sushi or any animal products, I do it 2 to 3 times a year. And it's for a month. The whole family goes onto it. You take 1 tablet between 1 and 3 times a day, depending on how old you are. Works fantastically. I was just saying to Mark, I'm able to I've just done Para-90. I haven't done it for about a year. And my eyesight, I can actually read my screen on my computer without having to wear my reading glasses. I put them on tonight. I'm like, no, I can read this. But every time I do it, I find my eyesight improves. I'm surrounded by animals and children all the time. And so it's very easy to get exposed. And I might not wash my apple as carefully as I should have, and I might get exposed to parasites. So I do it regularly. The other thing that I would, if a child has itching as well, then I would make sure that they are on the Omega and the Barley Life, because that helps the adrenal glands to work properly. And then the adrenal glands produce natural antihistamines. The child may have allergies from sheets or soap powder or weird allergies, eating something that's causing them itchy. If it's allergies to natural things like strawberries or avocados or any sort of natural things, the dog or the cat might be sleeping on the bed. If it's anything like that, then it's a lack of omega-3s. And sorry, omega-3s, best sources from flax oil, and the best combination to get that perfect balance is omega. I found it to be absolutely the best. Speak to the person who invited you tonight, and you'll know, they'll tell you how to get all info at wholeworldwell.com. And they will tell you how to get your the Omega and the Barley Life the products that I've spoken from directly from the company so that you get the wholesale price. You never want to pay full price for stuff. If you become a wholesale member, you don't have to sell to anybody. You just buy your own products from them. They don't expect you to fill your garage or big cupboard with product at all. So I would make sure that you are, with itching, omega-3s, a lack of omega-3s can definitely cause problems like itching in the skin as well, and allergic type reactions. But the barley life is needed by the body because it contains the antioxidants. In its natural form, it helps to make the conversions that need to be made from omega-3s into the 5 different derivatives, including EPA and DHA. Very important that you take that. That's where I would start right now. And get your child to eat more fresh fruit. Even if it's one kind of fruit and one kind of vegetable, all of that helps the adrenal glands to recover because you're getting natural vitamin C into the body. And then if you don't want your child, if your child's not happy to go outside barefoot, at least let them get outside and be touching the trees with their hands, putting his hand on the garden, bending down and putting his hand into soil. We've had so many kids that come to our school won't touch soil. They will not touch it. They don't want to get dirty hands. They've lived in a very sterile environment and their parents have realized it, always wiping them and keeping them clean. And so they've never had the opportunity to go outside. And here at our school, we teach them to garden and we teach them to grow their own food and pick things. And so you see them sort of reluctantly getting involved and asking for gloves. But at least if those children will climb a tree, that's the first thing. So if they can touch a tree and touch plants, maybe pick some flowers or sit in the grass and touch the lawn, if it's a nice clean patch, in time what will happen is one day you'll just find they've taken their shoes off and they're running about. And it could take a couple of months. Don't panic about it. You get into the habit of going outside, maybe in sandals, taking them off and putting your feet on the ground and saying, oh, the grass feels, and it does, the grass or the sand, beach sand, feels so amazing underneath your feet when you've had shoes on all day long. I get like, oh, I don't want to take my socks and shoes off because then I'm going to get full of sand. I'm going to put sand in this car and then it's going to get in my socks. And then I think, damn it, I'm just going to do this because I know it feels amazing. And then you do it and you think, oh, gosh, I feel like a whole weight has fallen off my back just from doing that one thing. It's the most unbelievable thing. I actually knew a professor, Dr. Louis Marin. He told me, it was him. Yeah, he used to roll on the grass in the mornings, and his daughter stood at the back door one day and put her hand on the hip. She said, how do you expect me to be normal with a father like you? And he said, in all his studies, he'd found that these ions build up in the body, and the only way to discharge them is to touch the earth. And so he, instead of just putting his feet in the soil, he would roll around in the grass and feel amazing. And kids do that. They'll eventually get to that place. Encourage them to collect things like butterflies or beetles, or look for frogs under stones, or look at plants. Even painting, you can take a little book on watercolors outside and paint the flowers in the garden, not the actual flower. Let them look at the plants and actually paint them and do their own nature study outside. It's very important. Studies have shown that children that spend more time outside discovering nature are far more likely to be aware of it growing up and concerned about pollution and stuff like that. So it's very important for our children to go outdoors so they can be aware of the environment we're living in and how important it is to look after it. So, yeah. And that's the last one. Any more?
No, we're done.
All right, so thank you for this time. I'm sorry I've gone over the limit, but it's an enormous topic. And, other thing is to just deal with one thing at a time, ADHD or autism. But as I say, I've got the document. You're welcome to sign up for the program. You'll get it for free. Otherwise, it'll be available in the next couple of weeks, and you'll be able to purchase it online from us in a PDF format as well. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving me the honor and the privilege to be part of your journey to health. I love doing this because people's lives change. I'm not your guru. I can't change things for you. I cannot do it at all. You have to take this information and act on it. And if you feel you need to be supported through this program and would like to ask me questions on a weekly basis, I do not consult. I don't see people anywhere. This is how I deal with people. Is Q&As on Zoom on weekday evenings, and also there's, as I say, there's a separate time also available for people in New Zealand, Australia, Vietnam, that side of the world. They don't fit into the evening slots, whereas the Americans and UK and the Canadians tend to fit into it. All right. Thank you very much. Stay well, keep well, make good decisions. And here's the good news. When you get healthy, you spend a lot less money on being sick and a lot less time, and you feel liberated and amazing, and you become a nicer person. And who wouldn't like to be a nicer person? Stay well. Goodbye.